So my name is David Garcia-Rosen. I'm the Director of School Culture and Athletics at the Urban Assembly Bronx Academy of Letters, and I'm also a community organizer with NYC Let 'em Play and the Fair Play Coalition. What you just saw right there was Lisa leading us in June of 2018 to announce a historic class action lawsuit against the New York City Department of Education, alleging that they're violating New York City's very own human rights law by not providing Black and Latino students with equal access to the Public School Athletic League. Now, if you're not from New York City, you're like, what's the Public School Athletic League? It is the only public school league that any public high school could participate in. So if you don't have a PSAL track team, like at Lisa's school, you don't have track in your school. And so what does that look like in New York City? Well, it looks like 17,000 Black and Latino students have zero access to the power of sports at their school. Zero teams. And what makes it even more infuriating is that when you look at the experience of a white or Asian student at a New York City public school, you find that they have way more access to every sport offered by the PSAL. So if you are a white student at a public high school in New York City, you have probably about 25 teams. If you're a Black or Latino student, you probably have access to about 15. Then there's 17,000 who have access to nothing at all, which doesn't even account for the tens of thousands that maybe have one bowling team at their school or have a basketball team but nothing else. So it truly is a major, major problem. But why should we even care about this? Why are we all in this room talking about youth sports? We're here because it's not a sports issue. It's an education issue. If you go to a school with sports and you participate, you do better. All the good things go up, all the bad things go down. And not only that, I've seen it with my own eyes year after year in education that it literally turns shy students into leaders, and it turns dropouts into graduates. So those two students that you see right there, Argenis and Carlos, had dropped out of my school. And we didn't have any sports at that time. So when we got a baseball team, and when I say got it, I created my own league so we could have one because the PSAL wouldn't give us one, but we had a team. They came back into my office and said, hey, I want to come back to school. And I said, well, all right, you're not just going to come play baseball. And I laid out, you got to have good attendance, get your grades up. And not only did they come back to school, that they graduated. And they graduated because of the power of sports. But how did this problem start in New York City? It wasn't always like this. We used to have these big high schools where everyone had sports and there really wasn't an issue. But then Bloomberg and Giuliani and Bill Gates came up with this idea of small schools. And what that meant is now we had high schools with 300 students in it. And if you have 300 students in a high school, how are you going to field a robust athletics program? So literally, what wound up happening is overnight, the disappearance of interscholastic sports in New York City schools, but not at all the schools. It's at some of the schools. Now, UCLA did a 2014 research study where they identified New York City as the most segregated school system in the country. New York City, right? The liberal part of this country has the most segregated school system. And if that's not bad enough by itself, it's also separate and unequal. So you wind up with these small schools that are segregated and also have no sports. And I couldn't just sit around and watch that continue. And I kept asking the PSAL for teams, and they kept telling me no, 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 no. So I created my own league, the Small Schools Athletic League. And we started really just as a concept to prove that it could be done, that there was a way to do this, so that New York City would then work on it and solve the problem with us. And we started with 8 schools competing in soccer, and within 12 months, it exploded to 47 high schools, over 1,000 student athletes competing in all different sports, and it really was an amazing, amazing thing. But it wasn't just a league, it was a movement. We needed to empower the students to fight for the right to play. The league itself was a Band-Aid. It was like, we're going to temporarily fix this, but it's really New York City's. We didn't have the capacity to roll this out into the 250,000 high school students that attend our high schools in New York City. So we really taught them King's 6 steps of nonviolent social change. And we started with information gathering, figuring out what quantitatively exactly is the problem here. What are the numbers that prove this? And we took those numbers in that part of the campaign and filed complaints with the United States Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, alleging that they were in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by not providing Black and Latino students equal access to high school sports. Step 2, education. The students were leafleting. They were going to every rally they could go to. You see them playing soccer there outside of City Hall to draw attention to, like, hey, we don't have a soccer team, Mayor, so we're going to play right in front of your office and hand out leaflets. And that area where you see right there was strategic because all the council members and all the mayor's staff would go back and forth and have to pass us as we were shining a light on this inequity. And I believe in the video that's right there, you'll see a little example of that.
It brings unity, it brings a community from different, like, students are from different schools. And with sport, that community sport make it stronger, but without sport, it's very difficult for the students.
Okay.
Yeah, so we really need your help if you can help us in this issue.
Well, I appreciate the info, and I know I've talked to you guys last year, some of you guys.
So that's Marco Carrion, communications director from Mayor de Blasio. I don't know if you caught him at the end there. He said, yeah, I know, I've talked to you guys. Because we were out there constantly. We were out there week after week, month after month, just stopping everyone. If they try to get out of the parking lot, the kids would run up to their cars and be like, hey, did you check out this leaflet? And so we were out there really for a long time, which leads me into personal commitment. Like, that's a real one. You gotta be willing to put the time in, and we really talk to the kids about what it means to be a leader. Like, what does it mean for Lisa to be a leader? What does it mean for these students to take risks? What does it mean for me as an educator to take risks? And the reason I took the risk is because I couldn't keep looking at these students in their eyes and saying, oh, sorry, we don't have a basketball team, and then go on with my day. Like, it is the most heartbreaking part of my job to keep having to have those conversations with Lisa and her grandmother and keep having to give them this sad story that I can't give you what you want because the New York City Department of Education won't work with us on a solution. And so we went into discussion and negotiation. Step 4, the kids would go to all these meetings with us. We would meet literally every week with council members and all sorts of people, and this was the DOE's response. There will be no Marxist redistribution of sports in New York City. So when you get to that point of the conversation, you really got to start thinking about step 5, which is the most dramatic step, which is direct action. And that's what we got into in this video. So this was in 2014, inspired by the LA Clippers, who at the time were wearing their jerseys in reverse. So the kids went into City Hall, where the city's chancellor was about to speak, and delivered thousands of petitions to her, urging her to fix this situation. And as a result of this, we actually did get some money for the Small Schools Athletic League, but because the city was so mad at me and mad at the kids for all the protesting and everything that we had done, they actually took the league from us and dismantled it. And so the following year, kids that actually had sports teams now didn't have them anymore. And at that point, we were inspired by the 1968 Olympics and the Black Fist protest that the kids did at City Hall in this video.
Let's go to a completely segregated high school.
Let's go. Let's go. Folks, if you do not leave the chambers, you will be arrested. Walk out of the chamber.
Your PSAL is separate and unequal.
Civil rights matter. 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 Let them play. 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 Let them play.
Now, as a result of that protest, personal commitment really came in because I was suspended from my job. So they had warned me the night before. The chancellor's people said, look, if you go out with the kids tomorrow and do this, we're going to terminate you. And I made the decision that I wasn't going to continue to work in a system that was denying my students the access to sports, and not just my students, but tens of thousands. And so I spent 4 months in what the DOE calls the rubber room. It's a suspension place for educators. You just sit there. They try to terminate you. Luckily, publications like The Nation and other publications were really shining a light on this issue, so they weren't able to fire me. And so it brings me to today. Like, I actually come here today with good news. The new leadership at the Department of Education, Chancellor Carranza, his deputy chancellor, LaShawn Robinson, the head education advisor to the mayor, Brandon Cardet Hernandez, are all allies in this fight now. And so from that guy who said there'd be no Marxist redistribution, he got fired a few weeks ago. Yeah, because he wasn't helping the kids. I mean, but the chancellor, our new chancellor, I really feel like he's an ally. So I do believe that in year kind of 8 or 9 of this, we are at reconciliation. I do believe that the leaders of New York City now are ready to work with us on a solution. And my ask of you today is to give them just a little more pressure by letting them know that you're with us. So if you could just tweet that tweet up there. There's also postcards all over. It really does mean a lot. Like when they hear like, all of a sudden 100 people in Los Angeles seem to care about this issue. It really does put heat on them. We've seen it over and over. Like when the New York Times writes an article, all of a sudden they want a meeting. So anything you could do to support, tweet, go on the Fair Play Coalition website, find a chart, find a cool picture, tweet it out. I really do believe that we can provide every student in New York City with equal access to sports, and I urge everyone here to put the students out front. Teach them King's 6 steps of nonviolent social change and let them advocate for themselves. They are the ones that are impacted by this. Teach them how to fight and then stand beside them as we fight for the right to play.